Hi, you already know the basics of project-based learning. So in the next videos, we will present our recipe to start using project-based learning. We used to say that this is a recipe to start easy, but easy is not a good word here because project-based learning is anything but easy. So we prefer to say that this is a recipe to start small. The recipe tries to avoid the four typical initial mistakes, includes 5 key factors to facilitate the success, and requires the transformation of at least 6 weeks of the course, a deep transformation. A smaller activity probably will miss some of the key factors for success. So we say that this is the minimum dose of project-based learning. We do not claim here that this is the only way to start using project-based learning. Everyone must find the recipe that suits better its own teaching, students and topics. But we believe that when one tries to start in a difficult territory such as project-based learning, is it good to have a guide for the first step? And then when one becomes familiar with the territory, then it's time maybe to forget this recipe and try to do different things and to find other ways to continue. So now let's start with our recipe. Let's first remember a few basic things. Remember that project-based learning is the learning that occurs as a result of the effort made by the students to carry out a project. The first day of class, the teacher proposes the project when students do not have yet all the knowledge they will need. The rest of the course is organized around the needs of the students to successfully develop the project. We will understand as a project any activity that involves the development of a potentially saleable product. This will produce a great motivation, especially if the project is ambitious. This increase of motivation is one of the advantages of project-based learning. Motivated students make more effort, achieve better academic results, get more satisfaction, deeper learning, and project-based learning is an ideal scenario to practice genetic skills such as teamwork, autonomous learning, or communication. The recipe that we propose aims to avoid 4 frequent mistakes that we made in our first attempts in using project-based learning. These are these mistakes. First, we give little weight to the project in the grading systems. We usually made this mistake in the first attempts because we are not very sure of the success. Perhaps we are not sure of the capacity of our students or of our own capacity, and we don't want our fingers burned. We decided then to assign a small weight to the project that we would increase in the future if everything goes well. But in these circumstances, the students will not take the project seriously. They will make a small effort in proportion to the low weight of the project in the grading system, and they will obtain mediocre results, confirming in this way our initial hypothesis. The second common mistake is not keeping track of the students' work on a weekly basis. We tell them, okay, you must develop this project. The due time is end of May, for instance. In class, you will learn things that will be useful for your project. And I will remind you frequently the due time. We say things like that, but we don't ask them for intermediate results. Again, in these circumstances, our students, as anybody would do, will wait until the last minute, obtaining disappointing results. Some of them will even commit plagiarism in this desperate last minute. Another typical mistake is to keep the traditional final exam, in which we try to evaluate all the knowledge involved in the course. The results of this exam will be disappointing. We made this mistake in the past. We were happy finally with the results of the project because the weight of the project in the grading system was adequate, and we did a good job in supervising frequently the work of students. So we had good expectations for the final exam, but the results of this exam were disappointing for several reasons. First, the traditional exam is not a good way to measure what I've been learning during the project, as not all students learn the same, and they learn things that cannot be measured with an exam. And in addition, students working as a team can do things that cannot do alone, for instance, in an individual exam. So ultimately, traditional exams do not pair well with project-based learning. Finally, another common mistake is to assign a grade to every deliverable that the students do. We usually do this to motivate the students to do the work on an ongoing basis, but frequent qualification has three serious consequences. First, teachers will have a lot of work deciding grades because we want to be precise and reliable in our decisions. On the other hand, many students will relax midway, some of them because they would have accumulated enough points to pass the course, and they may not have the ambitions to obtain the higher possible grades. And some others would relax too because they would have accumulated poor grades and may prefer to dedicate their efforts to other subjects in which they are obtained better grades. As a result, we will observe a drop in motivation in the middle of the course. And finally, if every deliverable has a grade associated with it, and students lose points if they fail, then a nice sentence that we like to say to our students will not be true. We like to tell them, to our students, don't be afraid of making mistakes, because every new mistake is an opportunity for learning. This is a nice sentence, but our students will not see it in the same way. They will think, well, in this place, every mistake is 1 point less in our grade. The recipe we propose includes 5 key factors for success. To start with, you have to set an ambitious challenge. The students have to be impressed and a little bit misplaced. Their reaction should be something like that. How can our teacher believe that we are able to do that? In this way, the teacher raises high expectations, and that motivates the students as long as the challenge is perceived as achievable. There are 2 ways to make students perceive that the challenge is achievable. On the one hand, a detailed plan of the tasks to be carried out must be presented to them. The project is ambitious, but there is a plan, a path, and if the end seems very distant and difficult, the first step is not so difficult. And once the first step is taken, the second is not difficult either. Detailed plan motivates students and communicates clearly the idea that the challenge is achievable. On the other hand, at the time the project presentation It is convenient to show examples of projects carried out by students in previous courses. This, in addition to clarifying what is expected as a result of the project, will help convince students that it is possible to carry it out, since other students did it in the past. It is important to communicate clearly criteria of quality of the product to be produced. That is, under what conditions will the product be considered to deserve a good rating, and in which cases the rating will not be so good. Sometimes the resistance of some teachers to make these quality criteria public is surprising, as if by indicating this criteria we were making the task too easy for our students, or they were losing certain degrees of autonomy. Some teachers say they are already mature students and they have to know for themselves what we expect of them. Another key factor is planning in detail the tasks that the students must perform in and out of the class on a weekly basis. We already have seen that the existence of a detailed plan helps to project the idea that the challenge is achievable. But in addition, we all know well that detailed planning is necessary for a good work organization, especially if the work is in a team and the challenge to be tackled is ambitious, as it is the case of project-based learning. Other key factors are positive interdependence and individual accountability. You need to create a scenario in which there is positive interdependence. That is, each student must perceive that his personal success requires that all his teammates do a good job. That is, either we all swim or we all sink. On the other hand, there must be individual accountability. That is, each student must be held accountable from time to time for their learning. It is not enough to be lucky or being part of a team that performs well and deliver all the deliverables on time and well. Each student must individually demonstrate their level of learning in accordance with the initially established expectations. It is essential to keep track of the work that the groups do. We have already seen that not doing this is a common mistake. Therefore, teachers must be prepared to dedicate time to this task. Finally, the evaluation method must be aligned with the process. We have already seen that a traditional final exam is not going to work well. This would be an example of misalignment. We will see later how the evaluation method can introduce positive interdependence, which would be an example of this necessary alignment between the process and the evaluation method.